So with business owners, it's really important to consider, I think, two types of planning. Number one, for the business, right? And we talk a lot with business owners about sort of stepping outside of their business, the day-to-day from working in the business, and taking the time to make sure they're working on the business, planning in the short-term and long-term goal setting. And it's important to take into consideration there something that we call disaster planning. And disaster planning really covers what happens if you, the business owner, aren't able to perform the business ownership or the job functions. What type of a disaster plan do you have set up? Maybe you own your business with other partners or business owners. There are considerations that need to be taken into account of what happens if you or one of them become incapacitated or pass away. And so that's often covered in the corporate governance documents, whether it's the operating agreement for an LLC or the shareholder agreement and bylaws of a corporation, through provisions that we call buy-sell. And this covers what happens in the event of death or disability, or another event like divorce or insolvency by one of the partners. How do the other partners or owners go about acquiring the business or the business interest from that owner? So that's sort of the consideration of the business in estate planning or succession planning or disaster planning. But for the person, for the individual, we like to remind our business owners that while you're doing that business planning for your company, make sure you take the time to take care of the homestead as well. Make sure that you're thinking of yourself outside of your business owner persona and just in your personal life. Are you doing the right things about getting your will and your trust and your power of attorney and your healthcare directives in place so that your personal life and your business life are totally planned for and secure? So creating a smooth transition really is a question in an area that we refer to as succession planning or exit planning. And your exit can come, generally speaking, one of two ways. It can either be a planned for and an expected exit or succession, or it could be an unplanned for or, sort of surprise life event. Again, maybe somebody becomes disabled or passes away and is no longer able to carry on the function of the business. And so really the key to whether it's a scheduled or planned for exit or an emergency exit, if you will, the key really is making sure that you have a good plan in place for your business and a good team around you to help you take care of these things, both internal to your business, your staff, your sort of organizational employees, as well as a team of professionals and advisors that typically sit outside of the business to serve as, outside general counsel, business advisory counsel, CPA team, wealth advisor team, so that you're getting advice as the leader and the owner of the business that can help you plan for these types of events. When we talk about smooth transition, oftentimes we're talking about selling the business or transitioning the business to the next group of owners. And if you are planning for that exit, it really helps you to understand your business all the better, set goals in the short term as well as the long term, and then work to achieve those goals so that you set yourself up to, number one, maximize the value out of something that you've built, but number two, ensure a smooth transition when that time comes. Likewise, when you go through that planning process, you're going to put into place those mechanisms, those safeguards, if you will, that will help protect your business in the event of a surprise or an emergency exit. Someone's untimely passing, or they're in some type of vehicle accident, they become disabled, no longer to perform the functions of the job of the business. And so there needs to be a plan in place of what happens in the case of emergency. Well, I think what we can talk about a little bit here are the considerations that a business owner has to make in preparation for selling their business. Typically, when you've built a business of value, you have worked for a long time, right? Sacrificed a lot, maybe deferred, with the thought that when we go to sell the business, there will be sort of a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? We will exit, we will receive a multiple of EBITDA or some factor of annualized revenue of the business as a lump sum payment at closing. And one of the first steps we like to advise clients of NC planning is to consult with our estate planning team to make sure that they have the proper estate planning documents in place, whether it be, just a simple will and power of attorney and things to cover those emergencies, but also is there a particular type of trust, like a sales deferred trust or rather a deferred sales trust that they might set up in advance of the sale of a business so that when the business owner sells their company and ultimately become the recipient of a large sum of money, that they are prepared on the personal front to receive those funds and plan for them in the most tax efficient manner possible. So when we talk about liability, right, we're really talking about risk. And business owners are generally folks who have sort of an entrepreneurial mindset, and entrepreneurs understand risk. And so our job as counsel and business advisory team at NC Planning is not often to tell you you should do this or you shouldn't do that as a business owner. Our job is really to work with you as your team of advisors and educate you about what your options are, and then let you, the business owner, really make the determination based on the information available as to what sort of risk you are comfortable in taking. When we are talking about insulation of liability or mitigation of liability, we're really talking about how do we reduce your risk? How do we reduce the business owner's risk of what is happening in the public space? Because that's really the change. When you go from being an individual in sort of your private life to being a business owner, you're typically engaging with the public on a much higher frequency to a much higher scale. And so when that happens, the business, the company, the business owner become exposed to a certain amount of risk that they might not otherwise be exposed to just in their own individual capacity in their individual life. And so one of the key ways that businesses all across the country help to insulate around that risk or insulate around that liability is to create a corporate entity structure, a company, whether that's a limited liability company or a subchapter S corporation or a subchapter C corporation, to really become the legal entity that exists that houses the operations of the business. And so the legal entity becomes its own person under the eyes of the law. It's assigned a separate federal tax identification number, similar to an individual social security number, that makes that business identifiable. And then that allows the owner to sort of operate under this umbrella or, a limited liability shield to conduct business affairs in regular day-to-day business and have the peace of mind of knowing that that helps separate their business persona from their individual persona. Now, you have to be really careful as a business owner, and we almost coach our clients on this as we work with them as business advisory counsel, to operate the business on a day-to-day basis that is compliant with the laws in the state in which the company was formed and with the United States at large, to make sure that your business is compliant so that that liability shield around the business remains as intact as possible, allowing the business owner to have that business persona and operate their company safely and securely while being completely separate from their individual lives. And that includes things like keeping up with annual filings so that the status of your company doesn't lapse, as well as maintaining separate business records, bookkeeping, accounting, and financial depository accounts separate in your business, separate from your personal life, so that we maintain that integrity of the limited liability shield of the company. If you have any questions about estate planning for business owners or general business planning with your company, please don't hesitate to reach out to NC Planning. Our team is standing by and we'd love to support you.